What if it's your mind, not your intelligence, not your work ethic, not your talent? Your mind, specifically. The beliefs that are running quietly in the background of every financial decision you've ever made. Beliefs you didn't choose, beliefs that were installed in you before you were old enough to question them. Beliefs that have been shaping your relationship with money every single day since, and that you've probably never once stopped to examine. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people will never be wealthy, not because they don't want it, not because they don't work hard enough, but because they are operating from a set of deeply held beliefs about money that make wealth almost impossible, and they don't even know it. That's what this audiobook is about. We're going to go deep. We're going to get into the psychology, the neuroscience, and the real lived experience of what it means to reprogram your mind for wealth. We're going to identify the beliefs that are holding you back, understand where they came from, and, most importantly, give you a clear, practical framework for replacing them with beliefs that actually build. Chapter 1. Your Financial Blueprint, the Operating System. You never chose. Every single one of us is running a financial blueprint, a deeply embedded set of beliefs, attitudes, and emotional patterns around money that were programmed into us during childhood, mostly before the age of 7, by the people around us, the environment we grew up in, and the experiences we had. This blueprint is not visible. You can't open up your mind and see it written out clearly. But it's there, and it's running. Every time you make a financial decision, whether to spend or save, invest or avoid, take a risk or play it safe, your blueprint is quietly in the background influencing the outcome. T. Harv Eker, who wrote the groundbreaking book Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, describes it this way. Your financial blueprint is like a thermostat. Just like a thermostat is set to a specific temperature, and the heating or cooling system constantly works to maintain that temperature. Your financial blueprint is set to a specific level of wealth, and your subconscious mind constantly works to maintain that level. This is why lottery winners so often end up broke within a few years of their windfall. Their external circumstances changed dramatically, but their internal blueprint didn't. And so the subconscious mind went to work through 1,000 small decisions and behaviors to bring their financial reality back in line with what it believed was normal. This is also why some people seem to rebuild quickly after financial devastation. They lose everything through a business failure, a divorce, a market crash, and within a few years they've rebuilt to where they were before. Their external circumstances changed, but their internal blueprint remained intact. And the subconscious mind went to work rebuilding what it believed was normal. Your financial blueprint was shaped by several key forces. The first is what you heard about money growing up, the phrases that floated through your household. Money doesn't grow on trees. Rich people are greedy. We can't afford that. Money is the root of all evil. Do you think I'm made of money? These statements, repeated often enough, became the foundations of your belief system around wealth. The second shaping force is what you saw. Did you see adults in your life handling money confidently and wisely? Or did you see stress, arguments, scarcity, and financial chaos? Children learn by observation. What they witness becomes their model for what's normal. The third shaping force is what you experienced. A childhood of financial scarcity can create an adult who either hoards money out of fear or spends it recklessly because they never had enough. Either way, the childhood experience is driving adult behavior decades later. And the fourth shaping force is the broader cultural and societal messages you absorbed. What did your community believe about wealth? What did your religious upbringing teach about money? What did your school system say, or not say, about financial literacy? All of these forces combine to create your current financial blueprint. And here's the critical thing. Your blueprint was created without your conscious input. You didn't sit down as a 6-year-old and decide what to believe about money. It was handed to you, installed by your environment before you had the cognitive capacity to evaluate or reject it, which means it can be changed. It was programmed in, and it can be reprogrammed. Not overnight, not easily, but deliberately, systematically, and permanently. Yeah, Chapter 2. The Neuroscience of Belief. Why your brain resists change. Before we get into the specific beliefs that hold people back from wealth, I want to spend some time on the neuroscience, because understanding what's happening in your brain when you try to change a deeply held belief makes the whole process make so much more sense and makes you dramatically more effective at actually doing it. Here's the key thing to understand. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine. It's designed for efficiency. Every time you repeat a thought, a behavior, or an emotional response, the neural pathway associated with that pattern gets stronger. Neurons that fire together wire together. The more you've thought something, the more automatic that thought becomes. The more automatic a thought becomes, the more it feels like truth rather than belief. This is why deeply held limiting beliefs feel so real. They're not just ideas sitting loosely in your mind. They're well-worn neural pathways that have been reinforced thousands of times over decades. When you think, "I'm not good with money," that's not just a thought. It's a deeply grooved neurological habit. And like any habit, it takes conscious, repeated effort to change. The technical term for this process of change is neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself in response to new thoughts, experiences, and behaviors. For a long time, scientists believed the brain was essentially fixed after childhood, that the neural patterns established early in life were permanent. We now know that's wrong. The brain retains its ability to form new connections and pathways throughout life. You can literally rewire your brain at any age. But here's the catch. The brain is also wired for self-preservation. It treats familiar patterns as safe, even when those patterns are destructive, because familiarity equals predictability, and predictability feels safer than the unknown. So when you try to install a new belief, your brain often resists. It generates discomfort, doubt, and a strong pull back toward the familiar pattern. This is why affirmations alone often don't work. Saying, "I am wealthy and abundant," 100 times a day, while your deeply held belief is, "I'm terrible with money and always will be," creates cognitive dissonance, a conflict between what you're saying and what you actually believe. And cognitive dissonance is deeply uncomfortable. The brain resolves it by dismissing the new belief as false and reinforcing the old one. Real belief change requires more than repetition of new words. It requires a combination of awareness, emotional engagement, consistent new behaviors, and new experiences that provide evidence for the new belief. We're going to get into all of that in the chapters ahead. There's one more neurological concept I want to introduce here that's absolutely critical to this conversation. The reticular activating system, or RAS. This is a network of neurons in your brainstem that acts as a filter for the enormous amount of information your senses take in every second. Your brain cannot consciously process everything, so the RAS filters out what it has decided is irrelevant and highlights what it has decided is important. And here's the wealth connection. Your RAS is programmed by your beliefs and your dominant thoughts. If you believe that opportunities are rare and wealth is hard to come by, your RAS will filter out the evidence of opportunity around you and highlight the evidence of scarcity. If you believe that opportunities are everywhere and wealth is buildable, your RAS will start surfacing opportunities you would have previously walked right past. This is why two people can be in exactly the same environment and have completely different experiences of it. One sees opportunity everywhere. The other sees obstacles everywhere. Neither is wrong about what they're seeing. They're just seeing what their RAS is set to surface. Change your beliefs, and you change what your brain notices. Change what your brain notices, and you change the opportunities available to you. This is not mysticism, it's neuroscience. Champon, Chandom. Chapter 3. The 7 Beliefs That Keep People Broke. All right, let's get specific. Because the reprogramming process starts with identifying exactly which beliefs are operating in your financial blueprint and understanding how they're showing up in your life. Here are the 7 most common limiting beliefs about money that I see holding people back, and that research on financial psychology consistently identifies as primary drivers of financial struggle. Limiting belief number 1: money is the root of all evil. This one usually comes from a misquote of a biblical passage. The actual quote is that the love of money is the root of all evil, which is a meaningfully different statement. But the distorted version, that money itself is evil or corrupting, is deeply embedded in many people's belief systems. If you subconsciously believe that money is evil, you will unconsciously resist accumulating it. You will find ways to spend it, give it away, or sabotage your own financial success, because your deep self doesn't want to be the kind of person who holds evil things. The belief creates a ceiling on your wealth without you ever consciously choosing it. Limiting belief number 2: rich people are greedy, selfish, or dishonest. If you believe that becoming wealthy requires becoming someone you don't want to be, someone greedy or unethical, then you face an impossible conflict. Your desire for financial security battles your desire to be a good person, and most people resolve that conflict by staying financially modest, because their identity as a good person matters more to them than wealth. The truth, of course, is that there are generous, ethical, deeply good wealthy people, just as there are selfish, unethical poor people. Wealth doesn't create character. It amplifies it. The solution is not to avoid wealth, but to become the kind of wealthy person who uses it well. Limiting belief number 3: I don't deserve to be wealthy. This one is perhaps the most painful and the most common. It's rooted in low self-worth, a deep sense that wealth is for other people, people more talented or more deserving, but not for you. People carrying this belief will often self-sabotage just as success is within reach. They'll unconsciously find ways to blow the money, kill the deal, or walk away from the opportunity, because some part of them doesn't believe they're worthy of it. Limiting belief number 4: there's never enough money. This is the scarcity mindset in its purest form. People who carry this belief live in a state of chronic financial anxiety regardless of their actual income. Even when they earn more, they feel broke. The feeling is not driven by their bank balance. It's driven by a belief that's been running since childhood, and it produces the behaviors that confirm it: impulsive spending, inability to save, constant financial stress. Limiting belief number 5: money is complicated, and I'm not smart enough to figure it out. This belief produces financial avoidance. The person who carries it never opens the investment account because it feels too overwhelming, never reads the financial statement because it feels like it's written in a foreign language, never starts the business because the financial side seems too complex. The belief creates inaction, and inaction produces the financial stagnation that confirms the belief. Limiting belief number 6: you have to work incredibly hard for money. On the surface, this doesn't sound like a limiting belief. Work ethic is a virtue, right? But buried inside this belief is an assumption that money only comes through grinding, painful, exhausting effort. People who carry this belief often can't imagine making money any other way. The idea of passive income, of assets working for them, of leveraged returns, it feels wrong, almost like cheating, and so they never build the systems that would give them financial freedom. Limiting belief number 7: talking about money is taboo. In many families and cultures, money is not discussed openly. It's considered rude, inappropriate, or private. And children raised in this environment grow up financially illiterate because the subject was never addressed, and emotionally uncomfortable around money conversations. This discomfort prevents them from negotiating their salary, asking for better loan terms, discussing financial goals with a partner, or seeking advice from someone who can help them. Take a moment right now to sit with these 7 beliefs. Which ones resonate with you? Which ones feel uncomfortably familiar? You don't have to have all 7 to be held back. Even one of these operating at full strength can significantly limit your financial potential. Identifying which beliefs are yours is the essential first step toward changing them. Chapter 4. Where Your Money Story Came From. Now that we've identified the most common limiting beliefs, let's go deeper on where they come from, because understanding the origin of a belief is one of the most powerful ways to begin loosening its grip. Your money story, the narrative you carry about who you are in relation to money, didn't start with you. It started with the people who raised you, the community you grew up in, and the experiences that shaped your earliest understanding of the world. Let's talk about family first, because for most people, the family is the primary source of financial programming. Every family has a financial culture, an unspoken set of norms, attitudes, and behaviors around money that gets transmitted from generation to generation, mostly without anyone realizing it's happening. In some families, money is discussed openly and practically. Budgets are made, financial goals are set, kids are taught about saving and investing from a young age. In other families, money is a source of constant stress and conflict, arguments behind closed doors, constant worry about bills, a pervasive sense of scarcity. In others still, money is simply never discussed. It's treated as a private or even shameful topic. Whatever the financial culture of your family was, you absorbed it. You watched how the adults in your life handled money, or avoided handling it. You heard the things they said about people with more money than them. You felt the emotional temperature of financial conversations, the anxiety, the shame, the resentment, or the confidence. And all of that became your model for what money means and how to relate to it. Here's something that might surprise you. Financial trauma is real, and it's far more common than most people acknowledge. Growing up in genuine poverty, not knowing if there would be food on the table, watching utilities get shut off, experiencing housing instability, creates real psychological wounds around money. It creates hypervigilance, chronic anxiety, and survival-based financial behaviors that make perfect sense in a crisis but become destructive in a stable adult life. Even if your family wasn't in poverty, financial stress leaves marks. A parent who lost their job and spent months in fear. A business failure that changed the family's lifestyle overnight. A divorce driven by financial conflict. These experiences teach children, on a deep emotional level, that money is dangerous, unpredictable, and a source of suffering. And then there's the broader cultural programming. Different communities carry different beliefs about wealth. Some cultures celebrate financial success and treat wealth building as an honorable aspiration. Others view wealth with suspicion, as something that corrupts, or as something available only to those who exploit others. Some religious traditions teach that poverty is virtuous and wealth is spiritually dangerous. Others teach that prosperity is a sign of divine favor. None of these cultural messages are monolithic. There's enormous variation within any community or tradition. But they are real, and they do shape financial beliefs in ways that are often invisible precisely because they're so deeply assumed. I want to give you a practical exercise here. I call it the money memory excavation. Set aside 15 or 20 minutes with a journal or a notepad and answer these questions as honestly as you can. What is your earliest memory involving money? What happened? How did it make you feel? What did you hear your parents or caregivers say about money most often? Write down the specific phrases you remember. What was the emotional atmosphere in your household around financial topics? Was there stress, silence, confidence, shame? What did you learn about wealthy people from your family or community? Were they admired, resented, distrusted? What did you come to believe as a child about whether wealth was available to someone like you? Your answers to these questions are the origin story of your financial blueprint, and seeing it clearly, often for the first time, is the beginning of being able to change it. Chapter 5. The Identity Shift, Becoming Someone Who Builds Wealth. We've talked about where limiting beliefs come from. We've identified the most common ones. Now it's time to start talking about what to do about them. And the most powerful place to start is not with a new habit or a new strategy. It's with a new identity. Here's the fundamental principle. Lasting behavior change almost always follows identity change, not the other way around. Most people try to change their behaviors first and hope that their identity will follow. But the research on habit formation and behavior change consistently shows that this approach is backwards. When your identity shifts first, when you start genuinely seeing yourself as a different kind of person, the behaviors that align with that identity become dramatically easier to sustain. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, describes this as identity-based habit formation. Every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you believe yourself to be. And the most powerful question you can ask when trying to build a new habit is not, "What do I want to achieve?" but, "Who do I want to become?" So let's apply this to wealth building. The question is not just, "How do I make more money?" or "How do I invest better?" The deeper question is, who is the person who naturally does those things? What does a wealth builder believe? How do they think? How do they talk about money? How do they make decisions? And then, how do you start becoming that person today, before the external results show up? This is the identity shift, and it's both simpler and harder than it sounds. It's simpler because it doesn't require a dramatic external change to begin. You don't need more money to start thinking like a wealth builder. You don't need a different job or a different city or a different set of circumstances. You need a different story about who you are, and you can start telling that story right now. It's harder because your old identity will fight back. The moment you start acting like a wealth builder, making different choices, setting aside money to invest, saying no to unnecessary spending, talking confidently about financial goals, your old identity will generate resistance. Internal voices will say things like, "Who do you think you are?" or "This isn't really you," or "You've tried this before and it didn't work." Those voices are not the truth. They're the old blueprint defending itself. And the way you defeat them is not by arguing with them, but by accumulating evidence that contradicts them. Every small financial win is a vote for your new identity. Every time you make a disciplined money decision, however small, you are building the neural pathway of the new belief. You are telling your brain, through your actions, that you are the kind of person who handles money with intention. And over time, those votes accumulate. The new identity becomes more real. The old one fades. Let me give you a few specific identity statements to work with. These are not affirmations to repeat robotically. They're frameworks for how to describe yourself to yourself, internally, as you navigate financial decisions. I am someone who thinks before I spend. I am someone who invests in my future consistently. I am someone who learns about money and applies what I learn. I am someone who earns well because I create real value. I am someone who is building something that lasts. The key to making these land is to pair them with action. Don't just say you're someone who invests consistently. Open the investment account and make the first contribution, however small. Don't just say you're someone who thinks before you spend. Pause before a purchase and ask whether it aligns with your goals. Let the action reinforce the identity, and let the identity motivate the action. This is a virtuous cycle, and once it gets moving, it builds momentum that is genuinely hard to stop. Chapter 6. Reprogramming Technique. 1. Awareness and the pattern interrupt. Now we're getting into the practical toolkit, the actual techniques for reprogramming your financial beliefs. And the first, and foundational technique, is awareness paired with what psychologists call a pattern interrupt. Here's why awareness is so important. Limiting beliefs do most of their damage when they're unconscious. When you don't know the belief is there, you can't question it. You just experience its effects. The emotional reaction to a financial situation, the automatic decision, the behavior you later regret, without understanding what's driving it. Awareness brings the belief into the light, and a belief in the light can be examined, questioned, and ultimately changed in a way that a belief in the dark never can. So the first step in this technique is developing what I call financial thought awareness. This is the practice of noticing your thoughts and emotional reactions around money in real time. Not hours or days later in retrospect, but in the moment. Here's how to practice it. Over the next 2 weeks, carry a small notebook or use the Notes app on your phone. Every time you have a significant emotional reaction around money, anxiety when you check your balance, resentment when you see someone else's success, guilt after a purchase, fear when you think about investing, pause and write it down. What just happened? What thought did I have? What feeling came up? What did I almost do or actually do in response? You are not judging yourself in this exercise. You are observing yourself, like a scientist studying a subject, curious and neutral rather than critical. After 2 weeks of this, patterns will emerge. You'll start to see which situations trigger which responses. You'll identify the specific thoughts that show up most often. And you'll begin to see, clearly and specifically, which limiting beliefs are most active in your financial life. Once you have awareness, you're ready for the pattern interrupt. A pattern interrupt is a deliberate mental or physical action that breaks the automatic sequence of thought, emotion, and behavior, creating a gap in which a different choice becomes possible. Here's a simple but powerful pattern interrupt technique. The moment you notice a limiting belief firing, the moment you catch the thought, "I could never afford that," or "rich people are just lucky," or "I'm terrible with money," you do 3 things. First, you name it. Literally say to yourself, "There's that belief again." Naming it creates distance between you and the thought. You're observing it rather than being it. Second, you question it. Ask, "Is this actually true? What's the evidence for and against this belief? Does this belief serve me or limit me?" Third, you replace it. Consciously substitute a more empowering thought. Not a fake affirmation that you don't believe, but a genuine reframe that opens possibility rather than closes it. Instead of, "I could never afford that," try, "How could I create the means to afford something like that?" Instead of, "I'm terrible with money," try, "I'm learning to handle money better every day." This technique doesn't change a deep belief overnight, but practiced consistently, every time the limiting belief fires, it begins to weaken the old neural pathway and strengthen a new one. The automatic becomes less automatic. The unconscious becomes conscious. And the conscious can be changed. Namaste. Chapter 7. Reprogramming Technique. 2. Evidence collection. Here's something that most mindset content gets wrong. It focuses almost entirely on changing your thoughts without paying enough attention to changing your evidence base. Here's why this matters. Your beliefs are not arbitrary. They feel true because you have evidence for them. Personal experience, observations, things you've been told, things you've witnessed. All of this has accumulated over a lifetime to make your limiting beliefs feel like documented facts rather than opinions. You believe money is hard to come by because your experience has been that money is hard to come by. You believe wealthy people are different from you because everyone wealthy that you've known seemed different from you. You believe you're not good with money because you have a long history of financial decisions that confirm that story. To change the belief, you need to change the evidence, and that means actively collecting new evidence, experiences, examples, and information that support the belief you want to hold instead. I call this practice the Wealth Evidence Journal. Here's how it works. Every day, you look for and record evidence that contradicts your limiting beliefs and supports your new empowering ones. This evidence comes in 2 forms. The first is external evidence. Stories of people who built wealth from circumstances similar to yours. Research on what actually drives wealth, that it's behavior and belief, not luck or background. Examples of people you know personally who are managing money well and building something. Financial wins in your own life, however small. Every dollar saved, every smart purchase avoided, every financial goal met. The second is internal evidence. Every time you make a decision that aligns with your new financial identity, record it. Today, I transferred $50 to my investment account. Today, I said no to an impulsive purchase. Today, I read a chapter of a personal finance book. Today, I had an honest conversation with my partner about our financial goals. These might sound like small things, but they are evidence, real, lived evidence that you are the kind of person who builds wealth. And as this evidence accumulates, your brain, which is fundamentally a belief-confirming machine, starts confirming the new belief instead of the old one. There's a psychological principle at work here called confirmation bias. Your brain naturally seeks out evidence that confirms what it already believes and filters out evidence that contradicts it. This is what makes limiting beliefs so self-perpetuating. They cause you to notice and remember the things that confirm them while ignoring everything else. The Wealth Evidence Journal hacks this system. It forces your conscious attention onto evidence you would otherwise filter out. Over time, as the new evidence accumulates, it begins to feel as real and as solid as the old evidence that supported the limiting belief. The new belief starts to feel like truth because it is now supported by a real body of experience. Combined with the awareness and pattern interrupt technique from the previous chapter, this approach begins to create a genuine shift in your financial belief system, not through willpower or positive thinking alone, but through a systematic process of reprogramming your brain with new evidence, new patterns, and new experiences. Chapter 8. Reprogramming Technique. 3. Environment Design. Here's a truth that most mindset content underemphasizes. Your environment shapes your beliefs and behaviors more powerfully than almost anything else. And if you're trying to reprogram your mind for wealth while your environment is actively reinforcing your old programming, you're fighting an uphill battle that you don't need to fight. Environment design is the practice of deliberately shaping your physical and social environment to support the beliefs and behaviors you're trying to build. It's about making the new belief easier to maintain by surrounding yourself with reinforcing signals and removing or reducing the signals that pull you back toward the old one. Let's talk about the social environment first, because this is the one that has the most impact and the one people are most reluctant to address. The people you spend the most time with have a profound influence on your financial beliefs and behaviors. Not through some abstract force, but through very concrete mechanisms. The conversations you have, the behaviors you normalize by witnessing them regularly, the standards you absorb from being around people who hold them, the things that feel possible or impossible based on what the people around you have achieved. If you are surrounded by people who talk about money as a source of stress and scarcity, who normalize consumer debt and impulsive spending, who treat investing as something for rich people and not for them, those conversations and those norms are actively reinforcing your limiting beliefs every day. You don't have to abandon your friends and family, but you do need to add to your circle. Deliberately seek out people who are building wealth, who talk about money differently, who invest, who build businesses, who think long-term. Join communities, online or in person, where financial growth is the norm. Listen to podcasts, audiobooks, and content created by people who have built what you want to build. The goal is to shift the average of your social environment, to normalize the beliefs and behaviors you're trying to adopt by being consistently exposed to people who already hold them. Now let's talk about the physical environment. Your physical surroundings are full of cues that trigger either your old patterns or your new ones, and you can deliberately design those cues to support reprogramming. Some practical examples. Put your financial goals, written out specifically, somewhere you'll see them every morning. Your bathroom mirror, the lock screen of your phone, the first page of your journal. Regular visual exposure to your goals keeps them top of mind and keeps your reticular activating system primed to notice opportunities aligned with them. Make investing automatic and invisible. Set up automatic transfers to your investment and savings accounts on payday, before you see the money. When the investment happens automatically, you never have to exercise willpower to make it happen. The environment does the work for you. Remove friction from wealth-building behaviors and add friction to wealth-destroying ones. Delete shopping apps from your phone. Unsubscribe from retail email lists. Freeze the credit card you use for impulse purchases. Literally put it in a container of water in your freezer. The few minutes required to thaw it out is enough friction to prevent impulsive use while still keeping the card available for genuine emergencies. Add wealth-affirming inputs to your daily routine. Financial audiobooks during your commute. A personal finance podcast during your workout. A chapter of an investing book before bed. These inputs don't just educate you, they actively reprogram your beliefs by exposing your brain repeatedly to a new way of thinking about money. Environment design is not about willpower. It's about setting up your life so that the right choices are easier and the wrong ones are harder. It's about making your environment an ally in your reprogramming rather than an obstacle to it. Chandit, Chapter 9, Reprogramming Technique. 4. Visualization and Future Self-Work. I want to be upfront with you about this chapter. Visualization has gotten a bad reputation in some circles because it's been oversimplified into imagine what you want and it will appear. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is a specific evidence-backed practice that uses your brain's own mechanisms to accelerate belief change and goal achievement. The neuroscience of visualization is real. When you vividly imagine performing an action or experiencing a scenario, your brain activates many of the same neural pathways as it does during the actual experience. Athletes have used this for decades. Visualizing a perfect performance primes the neural patterns involved in executing that performance. The mental rehearsal makes the physical execution more fluid and automatic. The same principle applies to financial beliefs and behaviors. When you vividly imagine yourself making wise financial decisions, thinking clearly about money, experiencing the results of disciplined wealth building, you are activating and strengthening the neural pathways associated with those thoughts and behaviors. You are making the new belief more neurologically real. Here's the specific visualization practice I want you to try. I call it Future Self-Conversation. Find a quiet place where you won't be interrupted. Close your eyes. Take a few slow, deep breaths to settle your mind. And then vividly imagine a version of yourself 5 to 10 years in the future. A version who has done the work, who has reprogrammed the limiting beliefs, built the wealth habits, and created real financial security and freedom. See this future self clearly. Where are they? What does their day look like? What are they no longer stressed about? What have they built? How do they feel about money? How do they make financial decisions? What does their relationship with wealth look like? Now imagine having a conversation with this future self. Ask them, what did you do to get here? What beliefs did you have to let go of? What was the most important mindset shift? What advice would you give the version of me that exists right now? Sit with whatever comes up. You might be surprised by the clarity and wisdom that emerges when you give your imagination permission to access a version of yourself that has already solved the problem you're currently working on. This practice does several things simultaneously. It makes the future feel real and reachable rather than abstract and distant. It activates your reticular activating system around the specific beliefs and behaviors that your future self embodies. And it surfaces insights and wisdom that your conscious analytical mind might not readily produce. Do this practice for 5 to 10 minutes every morning for 30 days. Track what comes up. Pay attention to what your future self tells you. And notice how your relationship with financial decisions shifts over the course of the month. There's a companion practice I also recommend called the Belief Bridge. This is where you take a limiting belief you've identified and construct a series of intermediate beliefs that bridge from where you are to where you want to be. For example, if your current belief is, I am terrible with money, and your desired belief is, "I am excellent with money," jumping directly from one to the other creates too much cognitive dissonance for your brain to accept. But a series of intermediate steps. I am learning about money every day. Then I am getting better with money. Then I handle money thoughtfully and intentionally. Then I am someone who builds wealth. Creates a believable pathway your brain can actually walk. The belief bridge makes the reprogramming feel achievable rather than delusional. And achievability is everything when you're trying to get your brain to buy into a new story. Chapter 10. The Emotional Dimension. Healing your relationship with money. Most wealth-building content focuses entirely on the intellectual and behavioral dimensions of financial change, and those matter enormously. But there's a third dimension that is almost never addressed, and it's the one that, for many people, is the most important. The emotional dimension. Your relationship with money is not just a set of beliefs and behaviors, it's an emotional experience. Money triggers feelings, sometimes powerful, sometimes overwhelming. And those feelings have a history. They're connected to memories, to childhood experiences, to moments of shame or fear or grief or inadequacy that happened long before you were old enough to understand money in any rational sense. For some people, money triggers shame. The shame of not having enough. The shame of wanting more than they feel they deserve. The shame of financial mistakes they made and couldn't undo. Shame is one of the most paralyzing emotions in the human experience, and when it's attached to money, it creates avoidance, secrecy, and a deep inability to engage honestly with your financial reality. For others, money triggers fear. Fear of losing it, fear of not having enough, fear of making the wrong decision, fear of being judged for having too much or too little. Fear-based financial decision-making is characterized by either extreme hoarding, never spending or investing because something might go wrong, or extreme avoidance, never looking at the accounts because you're afraid of what you'll find. For still others, money triggers grief, the grief of financial opportunities missed, the grief of a childhood marked by scarcity, the grief of watching a parent struggle and feeling helpless. Financial grief is real, and it's rarely acknowledged or processed. None of these emotional responses are weaknesses. They are completely understandable human responses to real experiences. But when they remain unexamined and unprocessed, they continue to drive financial behaviors that don't serve you, often for decades. So what do you do with the emotional dimension of your money story? The first step is acknowledgement, simply naming the emotion. I feel ashamed when I look at my bank balance, or I feel terrified when I think about investing, is more powerful than it sounds. Naming an emotion reduces its intensity. It brings it from the body into the mind, where it can be examined rather than just experienced. The second step is compassion, not judgment. Whatever emotions you carry around money and whatever financial decisions you've made in the past, you made those decisions with the understanding and resources you had at the time. You didn't know what you didn't know. The version of you that made those choices deserves understanding, not condemnation. The third step is professional support if needed. For people whose relationship with money is connected to significant trauma, real financial hardship in childhood, experiences of economic abuse, severe anxiety around finances, working with a therapist or counselor who understands financial psychology can be genuinely transformative. This is not weakness. This is the same strategic thinking that wealthy people apply to every area where expert guidance produces better outcomes. And the fourth step is to begin rewriting the emotional story around money through new experiences. Every time you engage with your finances with calm and clarity, even when the numbers are uncomfortable, you are creating a new emotional experience. Every time you make a financial decision from your values rather than from fear or shame, you are building a new emotional relationship with money. Over time, these new experiences begin to reshape the emotional landscape. Money starts to feel less threatening and more like what it actually is, a tool that you are learning to wield with increasing skill. Chapter 11. Sustaining the Reprogramming, Making it Stick. One of the most frustrating experiences in personal development is the initial burst of motivation, followed by a gradual return to old patterns. You read a powerful book, attend an inspiring seminar, or listen to a life-changing audio. And for a few days or weeks, everything feels different. You're making better decisions. You're thinking differently. You feel like you've genuinely changed. And then, slowly, the old patterns come back. The old thoughts reassert themselves. The old behaviors creep back in. And you're back where you started, or close to it, feeling frustrated and wondering if real change is even possible. Here's the truth. This pattern is not evidence that you can't change. It's evidence that you haven't yet built the systems to sustain the change. Because lasting reprogramming is not about inspiration. It's about infrastructure. It's about building the daily practices, the accountability structures, and the environmental supports that keep the new programming reinforced even when motivation is low. Let me give you the infrastructure that makes reprogramming stick. The first element is a daily practice. Reprogramming is not a one-time event. It is a daily practice. Every day, you engage in at least one activity that reinforces your new financial beliefs and identity. This might be the visualization practice from Chapter 9. It might be journaling your wealth evidence. It might be reading 10 pages of a personal finance book. It might be reviewing your financial goals. The specific activity matters less than the daily consistency. Frequency of reinforcement is what builds and maintains new neural pathways. The second element is regular financial review. Once a week, on the same day and time each week, you sit down for 30 minutes and review your financial reality. Your account balances, your spending for the week, your investment performance, your progress toward your goals. This weekly touchpoint keeps your financial life conscious and intentional rather than unconscious and reactive. It's also a powerful way to catch old patterns early before they compound into significant setbacks. The third element is accountability. Lasting change almost always involves some form of external accountability. A friend or partner who shares your financial goals and checks in regularly. A financial coach or advisor who holds you to your plan. A community of people who are on the same journey. The accountability structure doesn't need to be formal or expensive. Even a simple weekly check-in with a trusted friend who asks, "What financial goal did you work toward this week?" is dramatically more effective than going it alone. The fourth element is celebrating progress. This is one that high-achieving, self-critical people often skip. And it's a mistake. Your brain is wired to repeat behaviors that are followed by positive feelings. When you make a significant financial win, hitting a savings milestone, making a first investment, paying off a debt, acknowledge it. Celebrate it in a way that feels meaningful to you. You don't have to blow the budget to celebrate. It can be as simple as telling someone you're proud of, journaling about it, or simply taking a moment to sit with the feeling of accomplishment. The celebration reinforces the behavior neurologically. It tells your brain that this is worth doing again. The fifth element is flexibility and self-compassion when you slip. You will slip. There will be weeks when the old patterns come back. Unexpected expenses will throw your budget off. Emotional triggers will lead to impulsive decisions. Life will intervene in ways you didn't plan for. This is not failure. It's the normal texture of a real human change process. The measure of your reprogramming is not whether you ever slip. It's how quickly you return. Can you notice the slip without spiraling into shame and self-condemnation? Can you get back to your daily practice the next day without using the setback as evidence that change is impossible? The faster your recovery, the more deeply the new programming has taken hold. Chapter 12. Your New Financial Story. Writing the Next Chapter. We've come through 11 chapters together. We've talked about where your financial blueprint came from, why your brain resists change, the specific beliefs that hold people back, where they originate, the identity shift required to build lasting wealth, and 4 specific reprogramming techniques: awareness and pattern interrupt, evidence collection, environment design, and visualization and future self-work. We've addressed the emotional dimension and built the infrastructure for sustained change. Now, I want to close this audio with something different. Not a recap, not more technique, but an invitation. An invitation to write a new financial story. Because here's what I know to be true after everything we've covered. Your financial life is not a fixed outcome, determined by your past. It is a story in progress, and you are the author. Not the only character, circumstances and luck and timing all play roles, but the author, the one with the pen, the one who decides what happens next. The old story, the one shaped by your childhood, your family's financial culture, the beliefs you absorbed before you had the wisdom to question them. That story has been running long enough. It served some purpose. It protected you in ways you may not fully understand. And it got you to where you are today. But it doesn't have to be the story that takes you to where you want to go. The new story begins with a different set of beliefs. Beliefs like, money is a tool that I am learning to use with skill and intention. Wealth is not for other people. It's available to anyone willing to do the internal and external work to build it. My past financial decisions do not define my future financial results. I am capable of learning, growing, and creating a financial life that reflects my values and my vision. I deserve to build wealth not in spite of my desire to be a good person, but because of it. Because the more I build, the more I can contribute to the people and causes I care about. The new story is built one decision at a time, one day at a time, one small, consistent action layered on top of another until the compound effect of those actions produces results that would have seemed impossible from where you started. It doesn't require perfection. It requires persistence. It doesn't require a dramatic starting point. It requires a decision made today, renewed tomorrow, and renewed again the day after that. To think differently, to act differently, and to become someone different. You've already made that decision. The fact that you're here, that you've listened to this entire audio, that you've engaged with ideas that might have felt uncomfortable or challenging, that's evidence of it. That's a vote for your new identity. Record it in your Wealth Evidence Journal tonight. And then tomorrow, do one thing, just one, something small and specific and aligned with the wealth builder you are becoming. Read 10 pages of a financial book. Open an investment account. Write down your financial goals with specific numbers and timelines. Have an honest conversation with someone you trust about your financial vision. Make one purchase decision from intention rather than impulse. One thing, and then the next day, another one thing. And the day after that, another. That is how the reprogramming happens. That is how the story changes. That is how the financial life you actually want gets built, not in a single dramatic moment, but in the quiet accumulation of better decisions made by a person who decided to see themselves differently. You are that person. You've always been that person. It just took this audio to remind you. Now go write your next chapter. Let's bring it all home. In Chapter 1, we introduced the concept of the financial blueprint, the operating system installed in us before we were old enough to choose it, and how it shapes every financial decision we make. In Chapter 2, we explored the neuroscience of belief, neuroplasticity, the reticular activating system, and why understanding how your brain works is essential to changing it. In Chapter 3, we identified the 7 most common limiting beliefs that keep people broke, from money is evil to I don't deserve wealth, and asked you to honestly identify which ones are yours. In Chapter 4, we traced those beliefs back to their origins, family, culture, experience, and financial trauma, through the money memory excavation exercise. In Chapter 5, we made the case for identity shift as the foundation of lasting change, and gave you specific identity statements to work with. In Chapter 6, we introduced Reprogramming Technique 1, Awareness and the Pattern Interrupt, and gave you a practical framework for catching limiting beliefs in real time and replacing them. In Chapter 7, we covered Reprogramming Technique 2, Evidence Collection and the Wealth Evidence Journal, as a way to systematically build a new evidence base for your new beliefs. In Chapter 8, we talked about Reprogramming Technique 3, Environment Design, including social environment, physical space, friction management, and daily wealth-affirming inputs. In Chapter 9, we introduced Reprogramming Technique 4, Visualization and Future Self-Work, including the Future Self Conversation and the Belief Bridge. In Chapter 10, we addressed the emotional dimension, shame, fear, grief, and how to heal your relationship with money through acknowledgement, compassion, and new experiences. In Chapter 11, we built the infrastructure for sustaining the reprogramming: daily practice, weekly financial review, accountability, celebration, and self-compassion when you slip. And in Chapter 12, we closed with an invitation to write a new financial story, one decision, one day, one chapter at a time. If this audio moved you, share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe to Mindset Wealth Blueprint for more content like this every week, and drop a comment letting me know which chapter hit you hardest. I read every one. Thank you for being here. Now go reprogram.